Hi, hello, and welcome back to Even More News, the first and only news podcast. That's right. I'm Katy Stoll.
Hello, Katy Stoll. Thank you. And welcome to the first and last time I will say, hi, I'm Bonnie. How's it going?
Hi, Bonnie. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm Cody. It's the real thing.
Guys, we have such a great guest joining us today. Law professor at the University of Michigan, co-host of the podcast Strict Scrutiny, and author of the new book, Lawless, How the Supreme Court Runs on Conservative Grievance, Fringe Theories, and Bad Vibes, which, by the way, is a New York Times bestseller. We are thrilled to welcome Leah Litman. Hi, Leah.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. Jonathan's also here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hi.
There he is. There's the guy.
Nice to be here. Happy to be here. Thank you, Katy.
We've got some holidays to celebrate because it's always a holiday somehow, some way. Apparently. So Friday, May 30th is National Creativity Day. I like that.
Oh, that's nice.
Lots of ways to be creative, just, in your life. Jonathan, I love this joke. If you're having trouble figuring out a way to be creative, you can always just ask ChatGPT.
Might not be Shakespeare, but that's a joke that I wrote myself.
It's pretty good.
With your own brain, exactly.
Solid.
I'm celebrating Creativity Day every day.
I thought you were going to say, if you're having problems getting creative, get creative, be creative about
That's
it.
pretty
So
good.
I liked yours better.
Ooh,
No, that would be real advice, and mine is cynical about the world.
Yeah, Leah, yours is real.
Okay, and then Saturday, May 31st. This is a good one. National Speak and Complete Sentences
Day. Sorry, I thought it was Finish Each Other's Sentences Day.
I mean, this is a podcast that is specifically run on sentence. It's one run-on sentence where someone talks and then the next person finishes, and we can't do that here.
I've started to assume that someone will interject so that I don't have to finish a sentence. And then when no one does,
No problem. No. I got it. I'll take it from here, Katy. We got it. We're going to finish it. Complete sentence with a period at the end.
This is the best part of having co-hosts, never having to actually finish a real sentence.
the thought of doing a show by myself is terrifying.
Don't do it.
All right, Leah. Now is the part of the show where we pepper you with questions and get to know you a little bit and hear about your book. Congratulations again, New York Times bestseller. It's very good. I haven't finished yet, but I wanted to admit that when we booked you and we got the book, there was something in me that got a little nervous because whenever I read legal Supreme Court law things, I feel... it's stupid. I don't know. It becomes like the Charlie Brown thing where you're like, womp, 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 womp. But I very much appreciate your style of writing because it makes it accessible to those of us that don't have a law degree. And I feel like that was purposeful and important. And before we get into some of the more hard-hitting questions, but maybe talk to us about how it came to be that you wanted to write this.
So I think the book is in some ways the product of my long-running battle with the Supreme Court, my own feelings about the Supreme Court. So I clerked at the court about 15 years ago when they heard the constitutional challenge to the Affordable Care Act, and they almost blew up the entire Affordable Care Act based on their absolutely bogus theory that one day the government might try to force you to buy or even eat broccoli. And the idea that that was the real threat, rather than people not having health insurance and dying because they couldn't afford medical treatment or going bankrupt trying to save themselves and their loved ones, was so rattling and wild to me that I felt like I thought, oh my gosh, this institution is really messed up. People don't necessarily realize it. It felt like more people got clued in to just how wild the Supreme Court was when they overruled Roe versus Wade. But even then, I think people's focus has shifted away from the Supreme Court, with some people now thinking the court is going to save us from Donald Trump and Trumpism. They are the heroes. And I just want people to have a more complex picture of the Supreme Court and how it got to be where it is and what we should worry they might do next if we do indeed take our eyes off the court. So that's where the book came from, and it is intended for a general audience. I'm so glad to hear you found it accessible, because I think one important step in doing something about the Supreme Court is having more people informed about the Supreme Court. Like, majority of voters can't name a justice.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think for a lot of us, certainly for me, you almost took it for granted that the Supreme Court is going to protect us. The Supreme Court is the final stop. You know, I used to think naively that once you were given a right, you can't have it taken away, for example. And as we were chatting about briefly before we started recording, there is just this onslaught all the time, constantly, of this is getting challenged. This has been put on pause. Wait a minute, it's been reversed. This federal court going back. It's stopped for now. And I find, just to use the word accessible, very inaccessible, even just in the standard reporting, which you think would be designed to reach as many people as possible. But instead, just everything just feels so complicated, which adds to the terror that I feel all the time, because I don't quite understand what is actually happening.
It seems to me that conservatives were much quicker to understand that this is a political tool. We can cultivate people who will do what we want, make them feel like superheroes, insulate them from all of the people they're affecting. But on the liberal side, everyone kept believing like, no, they're impartial. They're just reading the text. I feel like it went that way with Obama nominating Merrick Garland and trying to smooth the divide. And the other side for decades was like, no, we've got this Federalist society. The entire point is to get them to do what we want. Now that they have such a head start, is there any chance of the left having a Federalist society of its own, or a whatever it would be called, the woke society? You know, like, can we, is it too far gone?
So I think there's a lot of work to do on the left to take back the courts. I think the conservative legal movement strategy paid dividends over the course of basically 5 decades, and it wasn't a straight line. They had some setbacks along the way, but they stayed committed, even as they were screaming about how the left was politicizing the court and the court was full of judicial activists. They were busy building a political case for taking over the court and trying to find judges who would fulfill their political ideology. The left's response has been just to defend the institution as an institution without thinking about what they are actually doing, which seems like an utter shell game and mistake at this point, given how corrupted the court has become and how captured the court is. As for a Federalist Society of the left, I think there are some parts of the conservative legal movement that progressives and Democrats should seek to emulate, like making the court part of politics and building a case for voters to care about the court over the long term. That's necessary. I'm not sure we need a Federalist Society or could have a Federalist Society in the same way. And that's in part because we're not trying to do weird-ass shit that a majority of the country doesn't like. And part of why the Federalist Society was needed was to have some affirmation for when the justices did weird things, and that isn't really needed here.
I do want to kind of bridge this to another question I had, because one thing that I really liked about your book is that I knew going in that I agreed with it or most of it, but there were still a lot of details that kind of blew my mind to read about. And on one of the first pages, there's a detail about Samuel Alito's dissent in the Obergefell case, which made same-sex marriage the law of the land. And it kind of blew my mind that he wrote it in there, because it is not a legal argument and it is a bad argument. Can you go through that real quick?
Yeah, so part of why I put it in the introduction is I wanted to hit people in the face with just how much they are grounding the law on vibes, like their personal feelings, and this idea of conservative grievance, that like they are the real victims no matter what is happening. So this dissent says marriage equality, the court's Obergefell decision, facilitates the marginalization of Americans with traditional views about marriage, and even recalls the harsh treatment of gays and lesbians in the past, which some might think about turnabout as fair play. So he is equating the fact that gay people can get married with the persecution and criminalization of sexuality and sexual orientation throughout the 1900s and early 2000s. Like, he is saying the way that opponents of marriage equality feel today and are treated today is the same, on the same plane, as when you could be thrown in jail for being intimate with a person of the same sex. Totally same in his mind.
And it is truly just that kind of logic, this grievance logic. Yeah, we are seeing that applied across the board to things. It's essentially that, in essence, that's the way that they are approaching so much of this.
How much do you think that is a actual belief and personal grievance that he has? Like, is it like, oh, he actually thinks that like these are the same thing, or is it more just this sort of like language he's using? Like, right, it's like, well, I need to make a case. I need to say something because I hate this and don't want it to happen. So they're sort of like creating these ideas after the fact.
I think it is a both and situation. I think it is a rhetorical strategy where, of course, it is easier to whip people into a frenzy and get them really mad and agitate them to like go do what you want them to do if they feel attacked and if they feel like there is an enemy. On the other hand, I really do think he believes this. I mean, he has said it in so many different ways, in so many different fora, in oral arguments, in speeches, in the pages of U.S. reports. And I just think if you say it that much and you keep coming back to it, you probably believe some part of it is true.
Yeah, it's not just, that it's effective.
You really want to believe that these people just live and breathe the law and are steeped in legal theory for decades, but they're steeped in like weird theories that are fringe theories, as you call them, and like just the Fox News alternate universe. Like it's like the inside of a Jiffy Lube where it's just Fox News on 24 hours a day in their minds. It's at least for a couple of them.
Sure, there's that. And then there is the obvious problem of bribes and them being in the pocket of people
the bribes.
that are, giving them fancy trips and fancy gifts and, funding their projects, and would think that would be utterly delegitimizing. But we seem to have just blown right past that culturally and have just rolled over and given up.
Yeah, we ignored that.
And it presumably is continuing to happen, but that has to have some sort of an element of the as to why they're jumping through so many hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another example where they feel personally attacked anytime anyone suggests they are doing anything improper, because when it was about to come out, when ProPublica was about to report that Samuel Alito had taken this luxury fishing vacation with this billionaire hedge fund person who also happened to have some business before the Supreme Court later on, Justice Alito preemptively went to the Wall Street Journal and wrote an op-ed saying ProPublica like misleads its readers. And it had so many self-owns in that op-ed. It was stunning. So one of the details that ProPublica reported is that someone who worked at the vacation lodge where they were heard them talking about drinking $1,000 bottle of wine, or said they were drinking $1,000 bottle of wine. So Justice Alito wrote in the Wall Street Journal op-ed pages, if there was wine, it certainly wasn't $1,000. Like, okay, Marie Antoinette, that makes it so much better.
It was only $500, actually.
Right, exactly. It was actually $10,000, you plebes.
Is this the same trip where he said, listen, the seat on that private jet, of Paul Singer's private jet, would have been empty if my ass wasn't sitting there.
I had to.
That would have been bad if that
It was
seat
an otherwise
empty.
unoccupied seat on a private jet trip. So Sam Alito, the environmentalist, just wanted to save jet fuel, and so he took that trip.
If he didn't sit in it, it would have been more waste, fraud, and abuse. And we gotta get rid of that.
Exactly.
You also recently co-wrote an article in The Atlantic with the headline, How to Hide a Constitutional Crisis. And that has been on everyone's mind lately. Like, are we? Are we not? Will they? Won't they? But what you put forth in this is that what they're using is a strategy called legalistic noncompliance, which is honestly maybe more dangerous than outright noncompliance, where they're kind of sneaking it around. So there's never a moment where we're all like, aha, it's finally happening. If you could speak more on that.
Yeah, so that piece is about like one particular aspect or definition of a constitutional crisis that people have fixated on, namely whether the executive branch is complying with unfavorable court rulings and court orders. And our argument is across a range of cases, they are insisting both in court and publicly that they are complying with court orders, when in fact they are not. They are just making utterly baseless legal arguments for why they haven't violated court orders and why they are in compliance with court orders. And that obscures the extent to which they are doing the very thing that people are so concerned about, not abiding by court orders. So that's the phenomenon we write about and are trying to draw attention to.
And it's very scary to me, as all of it is, because it seems as if the courts, we're doing a dance right now of trying to see how far it can go. And it feels like no one wants to make a strong case to make it clear that they are in noncompliance, that they are just shucking the rule of law. And it terrifies me that we might not ever have a moment where there is any sort of accountability.
I mean, they're using the tactic, like kind of like what your reaction to the book was, Katy, where it's like, well, I don't understand this stuff and it's hard to understand. Like being able to read it in this way is like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And they are using our lack of knowledge and lack of understanding and this sort of legalese and this hard language to obfuscate this, combined with Trump, who can just say, I'm doing what they tell me. I'm just doing what my lawyers say. Like he's so good at like just like wiping stuff off. Bullshit. He's Teflon with anything. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's just a constant bullshitter, has been his entire life. So that power that he has over everybody, combined with these like quote unquote serious people, are able to use this language. Like I even have friends now who are like, I'm going back to law school. I'm doing this. Going into this because the knowledge of it is so powerful now and important to have, to know that they are lying to you, so that you can hear Stephen Miller up there at talking about all these things and go, nah, that sounds wrong. Actually, sounds like he's lying. Which he does.
You know how
every
to
single
define
day.
habeas corpus,
right? Yeah.
Do you feel like they're okay with just kind of giving up their power? They don't want to do this confrontation because they should be writing right now, like, hey, we told you to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back from El Salvador a month and a half ago. You said on TV that you could with a phone call. Where's he at? And they're not doing that.
We only talk about it because you said it was a mistake at the beginning of it.
Yeah. So this is a part of the situation that I think is also concerning, which is courts desperately want to preserve their own authority. And sometimes that means preserving the appearance of their own authority by adopting a legal standard that basically doesn't require the administration to do anything to cure their legal violations. And I think the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case is unfortunately an example of this. So what we call this is legalized noncompliance, where a court will basically say noncompliance is the law in some sort of like perverted way. So they're like using law to enable lawlessness. And in the Abrego Garcia decision, the Supreme Court said the lower court was right. They can order the administration to facilitate return, but they also suggested the lower court went too far when they tried to order the administration to effectuate, i.e. actually bring about the return. So already they created this gray area for courts and the administration to manipulate and maneuver in to say, we tried, but we can't actually do it. They added additional language about how courts had to give the executive due regard for their power over foreign affairs. And also, they are the ones that required all of these challenges to proceed via this one legal procedure, habeas corpus, which focuses attention on where and under what authority an individual is detained. So they are the ones that precipitated this situation where there are now questions about whether a court can do more to get the administration to do anything to actually get Mr. Obrego Garcia back in United States custody.
It's infuriating.
Yeah.
It does feel, and I know facts don't care about feelings, but it does feel like a different president.
Facts care about some people's feelings, it turns out.
Some people's,
Exactly.
just not all people.
It depends. It's very situational. Yeah.
But it does feel, again, like we're in this dance where a different administration, a different president, they wouldn't feel so cowed, perhaps, and would take a stronger stance, would be clear. And yet they are letting this administration run circles around them for fear of what comes next.
It's fascinating seeing them sort of like try to like get all these people in the court and get this and like get this power in the courts, but then slowly delegitimize the existence of the courts at the same time. So like, okay, you did it, you got like the power, but also you're deteriorating their power at the same time.
It's wild because in some ways I think that could be the backstop that makes the Trump administration or Republican Party balk at outright compliance, because they know at the end of the day, this Supreme Court is their friend. And they're going to allow the Trump administration to do an awful lot. And also, they're the ones that will be there to stop Democratic presidents from governing. Like, they're the ones who blocked Joe Biden from doing student debt relief. They're the ones that blocked the Clean Power Plan. So they need them in order to advance their weird agenda in some times where they don't control the White House, in some places, states that are purple or blue. So I think that is in some ways this awful backstop that is preventing more outright noncompliance in this administration.
It's very depressing. It's very depressing to think about how we even possibly can crawl back from this in the near future or at any point. I don't know that you have answers for ways that we could, expanding the Supreme Court. Not right now, my God, but
great idea.
Why not?
20
the
people.
Previous administration. But yeah, I also, this has got to be heavy work for you to live and exist in. I do think that there's something fun about your book. I want to highlight, with different pop culture references that does make it feel less heavy, but it is heavy.
It is, but I wanted people to come away with it agitated and angry, but in a way where they wanted to fight, not where they wanted to give up. Because I think giving up is just another form of obeying in advance and anticipatory obedience, which we've been criticizing, some media institutions, schools, and whatnot for doing. And I don't think we can adopt that posture toward the Supreme Court either. And I'm a professor, so obviously have a soft spot for education. But I do think that public education and information is the necessary first step, because I think at the end of the day, a majority of the country doesn't actually believe that mega rich billionaires should be able to spend all of this money to overpower elections, drown out everyone's voices, and purchase themselves the presidency. Like, a majority of the country doesn't believe that. I think a supermajority of the country opposes that. And so I think if we can get this information out there, like, there is a chance of fixing it.
Yeah. This is the naive and hopeful part of me. I'm not saying that this is going to relax everyone. I'm not saying that this is the way to play out. But, I live in a pretty conservative community, and, surprise.
Did you?
I talk about it too much. Yeah, I agree. I recently moved around more and more. I conversations are dicey right now. But a through line is this idea of the wealth, the corporate rule over our lives, and people feeling really disenfranchised. A lot of people voted for Trump, not the right answer, but there's part of
Electing
me.
Trump and Elon Musk wasn't the right answer.
No.
Okay.
But there is a part of me that is naively hopeful that over the next few years, there will be more cracks and people start to see, especially with this one big, beautiful bill act that is going to decimate so many lives, that maybe this will radicalize some people to realize maybe.
Yeah, as it gets more prominent in public, more brazen, and worse for people. We're gonna definitely see the stories that there's one over the weekend of like a guy's like, yeah, I voted for Trump and he ruined my life and I've lost my job, but like I don't regret it at all.
He gave him a B+, I think.
That's
Because
maybe
now we
we're
can
not
use
talking about the same
slurs
guy.
at work and in
my-
public. Like,
Yeah.
that's apparently worth the price of the United States and maybe global economy.
Just because I want to try to prepare myself for the next year or two, do you think they're going to give him birthright citizenship? And do you think they're going to think the 22nd Amendment's the consecutive or whatever thing?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so-
Jonathan, why do you have to ask?
I got to ask.
So birthright citizenship, I think if and when they actually hear a challenge to whether the executive order is legal, I think they will say it's illegal. The case that they are hearing now is about whether lower courts have the authority to issue these nationwide injunctions to block a policy everywhere. And I think in the event they limit that, that is going to be problematic, though I ultimately think they are going to allow courts to issue effectively nationwide relief in the birthright citizenship case based on the argument. I just think they're going to require them to jump through some additional procedural hurdles and whatnot to do so.
They want to
And in
give
the-
him a sense that he won.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I don't think we
toddler.
should dismiss the possibility that they are doing that for that reason. I mean, Justice Jackson basically came out and accused the court of doing that in the case involving the funding freeze at the Department of Education. She wrote in a footnote, like, what reason is there for the court to do this other than to give the administration an early win, a notch in its belt, in the beginning of what is likely to be protracted litigation involving the administration? I mean, just last week, Justice Kagan, in a very pointed dissent to the Supreme Court's order allowing Donald Trump to fire National Labor Relations Board, Merit Service Protection Board officials, wrote that this court, the Republican appointees, favor this precedent over our precedents. Like, they have basically told us this court is in the bag and trying to give Donald Trump some W's.
But you think they'll allow other people to do injunctions in this district and that district, and they're not going to say that the 14th Amendment, that only intend, that's hopeful
good.
for me. That's better than I thought it would be.
It's something, but again, I don't want us to revert back to and therefore the Supreme Court is good. Because
right.
when they rule 7-2 that actually the 14th Amendment still is law, does not mean all is well.
Yeah, those two are still a concern.
Yeah.
Those 7-2 rulings are really fun for me when they come out to read through. I'm like, oh, wow, all these guys, and Alito and Thomas are just like, come on, we had it. We're so close.
Yeah, I thought we had a deal.
Come on, Amy.
Yeah, exactly. You're a professor, and I have to ask, I just have to, how is it these days? What's the ChatGPT situation over there? I know it can be a useful tool for, summarizing cases and things like that, but is it a problem, and how much of a problem is it?
Yeah, so it's definitely modified how we give assessments. I used to be very in favor of take-home exams. They gave students more time to process and think, and I liked doing that, just to create more space for critical thinking. Unfortunately, with the advent of ChatGPT, I just don't think that is a fair and realistic assessment method anymore. So I think more people have switched to in-class examinations that kind of limit your ability to rely on different forms of AI for, different reasons. I think some people have also incorporated some oral examinations as well to counteract that. So I think thus far it has been a move toward changing assessment methods as well as figuring out how to teach students to use it responsibly.
That's nice. It's nicer than, it sounds like you're mitigating the issues instead of despairing.
Appropriately, we're pretty worried about that reporting that came out a few weeks ago about what a widespread problem it is. And I'm glad you brought that up, Cody, because I was thinking about it leading up to this. Just in general, already hard enough to digest the news, hard enough to understand what's happening from a legal standpoint. And the less informed we get, the less able we are to parse through tough language and, and sit through something that's dense. The more terrified I feel about our future. But if at least our future lawyers are being given a proper education, that's something.
Yeah, instead of outsourcing our critical thinking skills.
Father's Day's coming up, and you know your dad is sick of the same gifts over and over. A belt, a tie, the Alien Quadrilogy on DVD, the Alien Quadrology on Blu-ray. It's time to think outside the box set, and that's why I want to talk to you about the perfect jean. They've got jeans, they've got polos, they've got denim khakis, which they call den khakis, the clever devils. The Clevels. These super soft clothes are perfect for the dad in your life, and they will cover up all the parts of his body you haven't seen since you were 3. Don't picture what they looked like back then. He's aged, but he's done it gracefully, okay? And don't take my word for it, because the perfect jean has more than 30,000 5-star reviews from men of all ages, sizes, shapes, and employment statuses. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our audience gets 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use code MORENEWS15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code MORENEWS15 after you purchase. They will ask you where you heard about them, so please show support for our show and tell them we sent you. Don't have to mention the song unless you really liked it. Khakis, all right? And get the perfect jean. And then, if he still wants something else, you can get him the Alien Quadrilogy in 4K. Quadrology?
Okay, so we should talk about some of the tariff stuff. It's been another tariff week. We had a few weeks off.
Liberation Week.
I've got mixed thoughts on Taco, but I'll get it to it.
Okay, so let me try to get through what happened in the last 2 days. So I guess some Wall Street folks have a new phrase that they've been using, a new strategy to make money around things. It's Taco. Trump always chickens out. They say, okay, Trump's going to announce a tariff. The market's going to react poorly. We can buy. Then obviously it's going to rebound when he pulls back on the tariffs, and we sell, and the cycle repeats again. He's predictable in this
money
one.
is so fake and stupid.
But then some reporter had to ask Trump about this and said, hey, are you a chicken? They're Marty McFlying him. And so Trump is like, first of all, Trump misheard and was like, who am I kicking? What are you kicking? And they're like, no, Trump always chickens out.
What did you hear?
Yeah.
Who told you that? Yeah.
So he's like, I don't chicken. I go, 145 down to 30. He's just like throwing off numbers. He doesn't know what the tariffs are.
Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country. And because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till July 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out, but don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
And so everyone yesterday is like, oh no, is he going to just put 300% tariffs on everyone to spite us? And then that same day, a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that Trump overstepped his authority in issuing the Liberation Day tariffs because
a judicial
Congress
coup.
does that. Right. And they said he can't use the emergency authorization. It's called the IEEPA.
International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Thank you.
She's good.
That one.
She knows off the top of her
I
head.
knew she was going to know this thing. They said, you can't use that. This isn't what the emergency is. Trade deficits
I
exist.
know, right? Like,
Get out of here is what they said. Get out of here. But then just before we started recording, an appeals court paused the ruling. So this one will not be going to the Supreme Court just yet. So now the tariffs, believe it or not, guys, are in limbo.
Oh, wow.
So we don't actually know whether the tariff issue might make its way to the Supreme Court at some point in the near future, because you're right, the Federal Circuit paused the Court of International Trade decision that had blocked the tariffs. But the day after the Court of International Trade blocked the tariffs, another court, the District Court for the District of Columbia, held the tariffs illegal, but on other grounds. So the Federal Circuit isn't the court that oversees that district court. So whether this tariff issue gets to the Supreme Court soon might depend on whether the Trump administration succeeds in getting the D.C. Circuit, that Court of Appeals, which oversees the district court for D.C., to pause that ruling as well.
And
This is a joke. A joke.
Is
Clown
there
show.
is their argument the same as it is with the El Salvador stuff, where they're saying you're interfering with our ability to do foreign affairs?
Good question.
So it's a little bit of a grab bag. First, I just want to pause and reflect the idea that we have now gotten to a position where the default is that the president gets to carry out unlawful policies while litigation unfolds is not a good default position to be in. But it's in part they are emphasizing the president's authority over foreign affairs and the deference that courts owe to the president on issues of foreign policy. But technically, the legal issues are a little bit different. They're about whether this particular statute authorizes tariffs in general, authorizes these tariffs in particular, whether courts can even review the president's determination that there is an extraordinary situation requiring some emergency response. So the precise legal issues are a little bit different, but yes, there's also a gloss of, and of course, courts, you have to give the president a lot of deference on foreign affairs in this case too.
I'm going to need to buy stuff, though, is the problem at some point. I wish it wasn't that way, but I got to buy stuff.
There's a lot of stuff I need to buy, and I'm like, this is at the time. I just want to say, everything you've said is very intelligent and worth pointing out and explaining. I just bothers me the taco a little bit. I'm like, I get it. It's a catchy phrase or whatever. I'm also like, I don't need to taunt him in any capacity. I don't feel the need to challenge him to prove us wrong and really go all in. We don't want that.
So I think there are ways to taunt him that actually could be productive. Like when they were presenting themselves and still are presenting themselves as so powerless to do anything to get Kilmar Abrego Garcia back, I feel like we should mock them for being weak, right? Since they are so all in on masculine energy and being manly men. It's like, okay, a real manly man could call up a foreign leader and get someone out of their prison and back in their custody if they wanted.
They were sitting right in front of each other.
100%.
They were in the same room together.
Goading him into another Great Depression, maybe not the best idea.
That's my takeaway. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Perfect example of a situation where goading maybe would have been appropriate. Well, we missed that, I guess, because now it's been
There
months.
will be other opportunities, I'm
And,
sure.
Yeah, I think because I guess a counterpoint to that would be we did bully Elon Musk out of government. He's very sad, and it's likely that everyone hating him is part of what he's sad about.
We also
so,
are apparently bullying Dan Bongino into crying on Fox News.
He's so sad about his schedule.
Do you guys want me to play that clip?
I do.
Sure, why not?
I think we might as well.
just
I
have some
happen to
fun.
have the clip.
A little
here.
treat.
Good.
Before we just do this, it's just so funny how every single one of these guys is so miserable about being in control. They're all in control of the government, and they're just like, I didn't have to do this. Yeah, you didn't have to, but you did, so get off TV.
Yeah,
But here
okay,
he
so
is.
here's Dan Bongino. He used to be a podcaster guy. Now he's the deputy director of the FBI, just under Kash Patel. And here he is complaining that like it's a lot of work.
It's not like podcasting. Who would have thought, Dan Bongino?
I mean, I gave up everything for this. I mean, you know, my wife is struggling. I'm not a victim. I'm not Jim Comey. It's fine. I did this, and I'm proud I did it. But if you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Kash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. You know, I'm in there at 7:30 in the morning. He uses the gym. I work out in my apartment. But I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., you know, by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard. I mean, you know, we love each other, and it's hard to be apart.
In which he describes going to an office.
So
Right,
funny.
having a job.
Having a job and working. Look, I get it. Being a podcaster is sick. I have short shorts on and then a professional top. My dog's in the other room. I'm not divorced from him or separated from him. But I didn't sign up for the government job.
It's so funny. You're describing a job and like going to a job and leaving a job and then like, I didn't ask for this. Well, yeah, you literally did. You literally asked for this job.
He thought that running the FBI would be like 6 hours a week tops of like, here are the files with the secrets.
right. Like
That the secret files are around, and he was just going to get to go online and say, look at here's a picture of Clinton doing crimes, right?
it.
Like
Got her.
that's what he thought it would be. But it turns out it's like a lot of administrative work. Like like what are you talking about?
I thought
deputy
this was a
director.
remote job.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Every single one of these guys, Musk can't stop complaining. They're all victims. I just want to like highlight the title of your book because it nails. It's not just like, yes, it is about like this conservative court but it's the conservative movement. The Republican Party, all these guys, Musk and Bongino and Kash Patel, all these people are just driven by grievance and these fringe theories and just like the bad vibes of it all. And they want everybody to absorb their bad vibes. And it's so dangerous and obnoxious. It's so annoying too, is the problem. Like if it weren't as annoying.
Okay, so there was this guy. I won't get too in the weeds, so stop me if I start talking about Ashley Biden's diary. Okay, so this guy, Paul Walchek, is a nursing home executive, and he takes taxes out of his employees' paychecks, and he's supposed to give that money to the government, and he didn't. He kept like $11 million for himself.
It's a lot of millions
He was
of
buying
dollars.
yachts and things of this nature.
Check out our episode about nursing homes and how terrible they are and how they're run by horrible people.
The executives are bad. So he pleads guilty to these tax crimes last November. On Inauguration Day, or around Inauguration Day, he applies for a pardon from the Trump administration, and that pardon application largely talked about his mother, Elizabeth Fago, and how she was a huge Trump fan and had helped raise money for Trump's campaign and was even kind of instrumental in like getting Ashley Biden's diary out there, which they got in a very strange criminal way. But anyway, and then there was no pardon right away. And then a couple of weeks later, this guy's mom, Elizabeth Fago, goes to a $1 million per person fundraising dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and then 3 weeks later, the guy is pardoned.
A pardon just appears.
I don't know what you're implying, Jonathan. It's just a series of events. I don't know.
All of this is so disturbing. And you know what also is very disturbing is this conversation online. I interrupt myself because I say this every week. But my God, the people saying that's right. That's right. You support Trump. Just, that we like this. We like this, actually.
This is what I voted for. Yeah.
This is what I want. I want the criminals free as long as they are Donald Trump's criminals. That's fine by me.
Yeah, he said he'd look into pardoning the people who tried to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. Like he's just like whoever it does. He's just the crime.
As long as
president.
you're a Republican, right? No MAGA left behind. That's what Ed Martin said.
Yes, exactly. And that is that's always been true. But it's just like every day they're just so much more blatant about it.
What is he running? This was a fundraising event.
Well, right. Is it for the RNC or other candidates? Because he can't run for anything. What's the money for? Leah, do you know? Do you know what the money is for?
Unclear. I think in the past we've heard stories about it going to like some of his like legal defense, and
Which there's plenty of.
Yeah,
exactly.
But not anymore. It's over.
It's free. Yeah, he freed himself by
Right.
being elected again.
So like he's just having fundraising dinners.
Going to
Kinda
his
cool for
quote
him, right?
presidential library, like the jet from Qatar.
Like the
Yeah,
jet.
yeah, he's just piling the money on the jet.
This has been going on for a long time. An Associated Press review of donations to Trump over the last 5 years found 1,600 contributions from donors who live abroad, have close ties to foreign interests, or failed to disclose basic information. I'm quoting the AP here, by the way. Often making it difficult, if not impossible, to identify them and verify the legality of their donations. Like, you can just pay the president money for things.
And like make it really obvious. It's so I always come back to I think the very first episode of the show we ever did in 2017 was about the emoluments clause and how like they could just impeach him right now. Just do it. Like he's clearly breaking the law right now. And it's just like what a bygone
Now
era.
we have Amalia Jets. Not
Exactly.
Amalia.
Exactly.
The Amal you Jets clause. All of my Jets clause.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is very weird. I think it's been this way in not just the bribes for Trump, but in all these different ways that things are normal now that they weren't not that long ago. Right? We were all adults. We all like remember 7, 8, 9 years ago. Like this stuff would have made people lose their minds. And yet
one of these. Like
right. But his strategy has been like successful. We are going to throw everything at you. 10 things a week, 15 things a week.
And then you're going to get used to it. And then we're just going to be able to do it.
Well, there's that. It's horrifying and fascinating in a way how this can come about. I mean, I don't fully understand it. Part of me wonders if we're so entrenched. The same on the left, knee-jerk, Democrats can do no wrong vibes, but there's this, like, I've got to support my guy, and if he ends up being a criminal, then I look bad because I support him. I don't know. I think there's just some sort of a knee-jerk. He's always getting attacked, so no matter what he does, I'm going to have his back. Energy, because I don't feel that even at this stage that any of this applies to anyone else.
Literally anybody else, no.
Literally anyone else. And I just, again, maybe naive, hopeful that once we eventually recover from this man, some semblance of normalcy will return. I don't know, but it does seem to be just for him. And I guess the Supreme Court justices, they can get bribes and shit.
I mean, we kind of already have seen this already where the justices rule a certain way for Trump, but then if Biden does something 1/10 of that, they say, well, the rule doesn't apply to you because of this specific reason, and they make something up. Is there a sense that that they will ever call out something so ridiculous that they are the ones who start to get mocked? I'm thinking specifically about this Federal Reserve like a carve out that they did recently. Can you speak to that real quick of what happened?
Oh, yeah. So in their magic made up ruling where they said Donald Trump got to fire officials in violation of federal law because the president has to be able to fire everyone who exercises considerable executive power, they then added, well, not everyone, the Federal Reserve Board, because reasons. They just inserted this phrase in which they described the Federal Reserve Board as this quasi-private, unique, structured entity with a distinct historical tradition. This is not law. It is not plausible law speak in any sense of the term. It is just, as Justice Kagan said, a bespoke exception because they recognize their new made-up theory required a new made-up exception because it would have catastrophic consequences. So they're just making it up as they go along, turning Republican policy into law. And here, like, their rule threatened their stock portfolios. and wealth protectionism. And so they just said, well, there seem like good enough reasons for Congress to prohibit the president from firing the Fed. So we're good with that, but not anything else, is my brief summary.
But this is that like hyper normalization of everything where we all know it's made up. We all know it's a joke, it's kayfabe, but we're all like just putting on this facade that it's legitimate. But what are you going to do? They're the people who get to say the law, so...
I'm not saying it's legitimate. I'm saying it is bespoke, made up bullshit.
No, like you can say it, and I'm glad you're saying it, and I'm glad we're saying it, but like we're over here, and it does not impact
the collective we.
If can we get this in the Wall Street Journal editorial page? Because there's an alternate universe out there where what we're saying is not true, or it is true, but it's good because they're doing it for the good reasons. I don't know what breaks that spell.
Yeah.
If anything can break that spell.
Yeah.
That is kind of the question, I think, in general, across the board with this this administration.
Some like absurd, like more absurd than it already is example to break through, or just one individual at one of these places to be like, can we just say what's going on finally? But whether or not that will even have the desired effect is also...
Maybe Amy will do it.
Maybe Amy will do it.
Maybe Amy?
Maybe Amy.
But maybe that's a new
Judging Amy.
podcast where we just ask Amy Coney Barrett. We'll be like, we think we think there's a person in there. We think they got some integrity in there. Maybe you should do it.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Please tell our listeners and viewers.
There's the book.
There's the book.
Get the book.
Yes. Where can you buy the book? Where can they follow you, read more of your work, listen to you?
So the book is Lawless, How the Supreme Court Runs on Conservative Grievance, Fringe Theories, and Bad Vibes. It is out anywhere and everywhere you get your books, including at bookshop.org, where you can order online but support independent bookstores. I also co-host a podcast about the Supreme Court's strict scrutiny. We have new episodes every Monday. I am also a poster at Blue Sky, and that's pretty much where you can find me.
Find her, follow her, buy the book, listen to the show.
Post alongside her.
Yeah.
Get posting, folks.
Post our way
Nothing
through
else
it.
Blue Sky. All right, guys, that's it. We are done. We are out of here. Like, subscribe,
All
etc.
the
Take
stuff.
care of yourself. Have a nice weekend. And remember, we love you very much.
Speak in complete sentences. Much.